10 out of 10 would not see again.
It's nothing that I would be running out to grab. Honestly, like I am struggling a little bit. Pretty sure it's cashew cream that's on top. How unlucky would you have to be for this to be your entire life? Hello my guys, welcome to a new weekly vlog, and this is going to be a little bit of an ambitious one for me, kind of work wise but mainly reading wise. So this morning I had Curtis running some updates on my computer. I'm not very technically minded when it comes to actually like fixing things and speeding things up. As you guys may have known in previous vlogs, I've been saying how I'm going to need a new desktop computer because I installed some updates and now it runs really slowly. So over the last like couple of weeks, every time I've run into something that's really slowing down my computer, Curtis has been coming and like troubleshooting it and clearing it and making it run faster. So he was doing some of that this morning, which on a Monday morning, not ideal because I like my Monday to be super productive. And my main task for the day is to finish or start editing actually the last episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, which fun fact, I'm actually still filming. I hope that I'm in the final book, but I'm still filming that video. So obviously like I haven't started that at this point and it is almost midday, but instead I've done a ton of admin, which is great because that is the stuff that I usually procrastinate on. So I've made a thumbnail for public reading sprints tomorrow because I'm thinking of making monthly public reading sprints a staple on my channel, which is something that I've talked about in the past but never made any effort to actually implement, which is honestly one of my biggest red flags. And then I have also done my tax return, which is good, and it was very slightly better than I anticipated it being, as well as sending a bunch of emails and invoices and stuff like that. So just before I get into actually editing this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about what I'm reading today because it is actually quite a lot. I have made myself a TBR for this week, but I'm just going to kind of talk you guys through it as we go through it together. So where I'm currently at with my reading is I have like 180 pages of what I hope is going to be my final book for Shelve It or Scrap It that I'm hoping to get through as fast as possible. I'm also currently reading The Gathering Storm by Robert Jordan, which I have started for the live show for Wheel of Time along, which I think is going to be on Deb's channel. We have discussed it, but I have once again forgotten. And the live show for that, I think, don't quote me on it, but I think it is going to be the 9th of February. So I've started listening to the audiobook of this. I did finally find one on Libby. For those of you guys in the UK, there is no audiobook in the UK on Audible or BookBee or Everand or anything for The Gathering Storm. So I had to set myself up a Libby account to have access to that. And I'm currently somewhere in chapter 7, which starts on 115. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of Wheel of Time. If you've been around here watching weekly vlogs, you'll know that I've been reading it for such a long time now, and this is going to span more than this vlog. I'm probably going to be listening to the audiobook of this down to the wire in like 30-minute increments until the date of the live show. But this one is by Brandon Sanderson because Robert Jordan sadly passed away before he could finish the series, and I am starting to see the Brandon Sanderson effect on here. I feel like I'm just understanding it a little bit more. Before, key points of this series that have been introduced like way earlier in the series, but before they're brought up in this book, there's kind of just a line that's seamlessly woven into the text that's like, oh, this thing is this thing, and then it like gets back to it like really quickly. And I'm finding that because of that, I'm keeping the thread of the book a little bit more with very little effort on my part, which is great because my main issue with Wheel of Time is that I felt like Robert Jordan isn't very good at introducing things in the right place and then maintaining their relevance throughout the narrative while other bits are being introduced and focused on a little bit more. And I think that that is definitely, through reading just Brandon Sanderson in general, that's definitely something that he's a little bit more skilled with, and it is already evident in the first like 10% of this book that I've read. It is a chunky one, which is why I don't think I'm finishing it anytime soon. It's 806 pages. So this one's going to take me a while. And then the book that I'm about to start is one that I'm very excited for. It is my buddy read with Aaron for the month, and that is Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. This one is also my Patreon pick for January. It's Fion's pick, and it's one that I've been very excited to get to, especially because I have actually just ordered the third book from Illumicrate. I already have the second. So it's time to find out if I actually do like this series, which I'm very hopeful because I know a bunch of people have loved it, and I've only heard very few bad things about this this one, all I know about it is that it is about somebody who is a god killer. I think that the reason they kill gods is because gods killed their family and they encounter an unkillable god which sends them on a quest potentially with that god. Now, the reason why it blows my mind that so many people give this a 5-star rating is just because of how short it is for an adult fantasy, which is typically like a red flag for me. Now, I know, especially with the amount of words on the page and the smallness of the margins, that it is quite a dense book, but page count wise it still only comes in at 288 pages, which I just genuinely find so shocking. But I am going to be buddy reading this one with Aaron at a rate of about 41 pages per day to have this done by the end of this week, and it's only like about 4 chapters a day, so I'm going to be starting this probably this afternoon. We'll see how we get on with it, and then when I finish my last book, or hopefully fingers crossed my last book for Shelf It or Scrap It, I do plan on picking up something else from my January TBR to be my main read. I have only read one book off my January TBR so far, which was Malice, because I aimed, like in my planner I have Shelf It or Scrap It down to be filmed between the 1st and the 12th of the month, and it's now the 20th and we're still going, so that has not gone to plan. But we have had friends over in the past week, which is why there's no kind of like weekly vlog that happened during that week. And obviously with having people here and preparing to have people here, it was also like a big surprise for Curtis's birthday. He didn't know that our friends were coming, and so the pressure of kind of all of that and getting everything ready myself and organized and then having friends here means that I haven't read a lot over the last week. And while I did account for that in my schedule, I didn't account for not having finished Shelf It or Scrap It at this point, which has me a little bit behind. But the book I'm reading is like an angsty new adult smutty romance, so in terms of brain power and like speed of reading, it's a pretty easy one to be getting on with. Welcome to movie review time in the car, this time for Nosferatu, which was my pick. I got an email for 2 cinema tickets for £10 and I was like, cool, let's go. And it was in between this and the like Andrew Garfield sad I've parked the wrong way because I've parked facing away from the cinema, so we're not using like the cinema light to light us. But yeah, it was between this and the sad Andrew Garfield movie, and I wasn't sure watching the trailer because the trailer for this was giving absolutely nothing, right? Just like close-ups of things. But then a bunch of people were saying that like they were reacting to it in a similar way that people reacted to Saltburn, and I loved Saltburn. So we watched it, and what did you think?
Going into it, my only knowledge of Nosferatu is the scene in SpongeBob where he's flickering the light, which you won't get. No. But it's like a random comedy thing.
Did he flicker the light in this?
No.
I don't know how to turn this on. Oh,
because in the episode they're wondering who's flickering the light, and then at the end SpongeBob just says, "Oh, Nosferatu," and then it cuts to like an actual still of Nosferatu, the film.
Like the 1930s one, I think.
Quick like shock, out of context comedy thing.
I didn't really know anything about Nosferatu apart from that he's like a super old vampire, and I actually didn't know that it was very closely based off Dracula, but isn't Dracula for like copyright purposes. So yeah, that was kind of my knowledge going into it. Some of our friends went to see this before we did, and Curtis doesn't really like horror, so I thought that it was more like a gothic suspense, which it is, but like I don't know, like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, where things are like creepy but not actually explicit or scary. It's more like a foreboding atmosphere. And especially, well, yeah, but especially because the trailer was giving nothing, I was like, okay, so it's just like a creepy suspense. It's definitely horror. It's definitely horror. And it gave me the ick a lot. Like I didn't expect it to be as graphic and like gross as it was.
But Willem Dafoe, very good. And I enjoyed like The Exorcist.
Yeah, I feel like this was like
scenes.
Sweeney Todd meets The Exorcist, written by the Brontes. Because I feel like it had Bronte energy in there as well, with like the gloominess of it, but then also like the fact that it's historical, so like the script and the dialogue.
It was also, I don't know if it was shot in the aspect ratio of old, but the whole film was very old.
It was very
in the way the voices, the scenery, the sound effects.
I noticed that they used a lot of like really close up straight on shots to make you feel unsettled, and it's definitely something that makes you feel disturbed, not only because of like the gross stuff but also just the way that it's shot to like create tension. I thought was interesting. Lily Rose Depp though deserves an Oscar for that performance, because that was good. that was some good shit. She was the best part of it. Aaron Tyler Johnson, I feel like I expected more from his acting. Like, some of the acting felt weird, but I don't know if that was the script or whether like they were supposed to be like that, but sometimes it just felt like it. I don't know, like some lines I didn't feel like were delivered the way I felt they were supposed to be. 10 out of 10 would not see again, probably. But it was I wouldn't compare it to Saltburn. I would say that it is shocking in that it is disturbing and that it is graphic and it's bloody. I honestly don't know why it's a 15, because what are we reserving for adults? Like, if that's a 15, what are we saving for over 18-year-olds? Because it has nudity, including a penis. So not just boobs, like, but there's plenty of boobs. But it has a penis. There's like gore. There's lots of things being bitten and things ripped out. So yeah, I'm not really sure what will constitute as an adult movie at this point. 2 penises? But yeah, anyway, I do need to talk to you guys about books, which I will do tomorrow now because it is 11 p.m, 10 to 11, and we're going to Asda before we go home, because of course we are. I love a late night trip to Asda. But I'm really enjoying Godkiller, and I DNF my last book for Shelve It or Scrap It, so I need to talk to you guys about what I'm going to be picking up next. But first, I'm going to go get myself some protein yogurts from Asda. I will be honest, this is not an ideal time for me to do this update because I am an anxious wreck today, and I feel like my anxiety is only really going to progress through the day, but the show must go on. Essentially, I have a dental appointment at 2 p.m. for a couple of fill-ins, which aren't the end of the world, but I do have dental anxiety, and it's not the kind of anxiety surrounding procedures or injections or teeth cleanings or anything like that. That is fine. It is the anxiety of seeing a medical professional and having them say there's something wrong with me. So when I went to my checkup for the dentist last week, because I have had fill-ins before and had like a complete non-emotional reaction and everything's been fine because they're not the end of the world, but when I went to my checkup last time, like, I've had a new dentist, like it was my first time seeing a new dentist, and I just went into it in like a really bad mood, so everything that happened in that appointment triggered me and has sent me into like a mad anxiety spiral. Like, if you were here a couple of years ago, you'll remember me talking about how mornings were really hard for me and it takes me ages to get myself together because my anxiety is like paralyzing, and I'm kind of in that place right now. But I did want to update you guys before we get to my appointment later, because depending on how the appointment goes, I could be completely non-anxious after that, or I could be like so much more anxious where I have to really just like clear my schedule and sit for a while. So in terms of reading, I'm sure it's gonna be fine. Am I? No, I'm not, but it is what it is. Anyway, reading books. I need to start a new book because, like I said last night, I did DNF my last Shelve It or Scrap It book. I have a mood read on my Kindle, which I shouldn't be reading, that I keep dipping into intermittently, but I don't want to tell you guys about it because it's not supposed to be my main read. If we get to a point where it is, I'll let you know a little bit more, but essentially I'm quite far into Godkiller now. I think I'm less than 100 pages. However, less than 100 pages is like over a quarter of this book. I think I'm over 30% of the way through. Actually, I'm on page 100 exactly, so this is a perfect time to update you guys. So as I said going into this, I was a little bit worried because of how short it is, and short fantasy for me doesn't often work because I feel like you're really, I mean, not always, but generally I feel like you're sacrificing exposition and like detailed, like complex character development for the sake of having like a punchy plot, and that is not what is happening here. It's actually interesting because we don't have tons of exposition. Like, there's not massive info dumps of description. There isn't any particular slow moments where nothing is really happening. We are still in like an establishment phase of this book, but every scene is like doing a really good job of filling in the world whilst also endearing you to the characters and also introducing the plot. It's really quite crazy because I have such a good grasp of this world, and it's not an easy one. It's not like this is a contemporary fantasy or an urban fantasy where you can kind of fill in the blanks yourself because it is like a world that you're familiar with, like our world or something akin to it. It is an entirely fantastical world, and even though there isn't excessive amounts of world building, I have a really good grasp of what's going on here, and I can't even tell you how Hannah Kaner is doing it, but I can tell you that she's doing an excellent job. My favorite thing about this so far is the the atmosphere. It is not a gothic story, but I would liken it to a gothic story in that I feel like the atmosphere has a presence. Like, the world in here is gloomy. Like, I can feel the world. That is honestly the best way that I can explain it, but I can feel like kind of the atmosphere of the book, like in this world, like overshadowing the story that I'm reading. And in terms of what this one is actually about, because when I got a little bit into this, I actually reread the synopsis, and the exact way that things play out in the story, I never would have guessed from what the synopsis actually gives us. So we're following a Vega called Kissin, and Vegas are god killers. So the main character, or one of the main characters in here, because it is multi-perspective, is not special in that she is a god killer. It is like, they're like bands of mercenaries. They do exist. And there was a god war some years before the start of this story where the king has banished the worship of all gods. So Vegas used to be kind of like bounty hunters, like they were undercover, and now they work for the king because the king wants all gods eradicated. Kissin has no problem killing gods because her family were actually murdered by the worshippers of a god, and so since then, even though her family supported a different god, like, she has turned her back on gods altogether. I think the way that the gods work in this world is really interesting because they are actual physical presences, but they are tied to the devotion of their worshippers. It reminds me a lot of The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, which is this idea that like the only thing that makes, well, I mean, it's true, the only thing that makes gods real is people's belief in them. So they thrive on the belief of their worshippers, and if you strip that belief away, then they die. And it's the same, like, I'm not a religious person, but I personally believe it is the only reason why we consider like ancient Greek gods and folklore to be things like, well, folklore and mythology, because we no longer believe in it. But back in the day, that was religion. I really like it when that comes into play in a fantasy story, and also the way that you have a physical manifestation of gods. Like, even if they're dying, even if nobody believes in them anymore, if they have a shrine, they have something to be tethered to, and that is the way that you can find them and kill them. So we are following this god hunter as she meets a child. Now in here it does say that she is a young noble, but she really is young. Like, she's 12 years old, and when she hears that there's a god killer in town, she goes to visit Kissin and asks for her help because she has a god tethered to her. He's almost like a pet or an animal companion, and he can change size and like shapeshift a little bit, but essentially you should only be able to tie a god to a shrine. So the fact that this god is tied to this little girl is so bizarre, and it's something that Kissin has never heard of before. And while the girl is friends with her god, she also would like to be separated from him because they can only go like a short distance apart, and if they go any further, like, they're in crippling agony. We also follow somebody who is one of the king's knights, or one of the king's old knights. So they're very close friends, but after the war they went their separate ways because Elagast does not believe in what the king did when he like abolished all of the religion. Like, he comes from quite a religious family, and he doesn't believe that stripping people's rights to worship away and to eradicate all of the gods was the right decision. However, he kind of like silently supported his friend and was like, okay, like, I'm not going to do anything about this, but I don't want to be your knight anymore. So he's going to live a quiet life as a baker. However, one day the king turns up on his doorstep and he's like, I have a real problem and I'm going to die unless you help me. So Elagast has to get his sword back out and adventure across the world to this city called Blenheim, which is essentially where this war went down. Like, it is somewhere that was rife with like worshippers. The god war from the past happened there, and the city was abandoned afterwards. So it's kind of like this ghost town now where some of the old and powerful gods still live, and the idea was that if everybody abandoned it, then people would stop worshipping the gods and they would just like kind of fade into oblivion. And so entering the city is illegal. However, there are pilgrimages that still travel into the city of like secret worshippers who want to go and give tribute to their gods. So all of our characters end up joining one of these pilgrimages, which feels like I'm saying it wrong, but I don't think I am. Pilgrimages. I don't know what the issue is there. But anyway, all of our characters end up joining one into the city to accomplish their like separate tasks. And I'm assuming that something goes a little bit wrong from there because I know it says something about civil war in here. A lot of people aren't happy with the king because of what he's done, and I think that that is where that is going to come into play, because there was also an element of betrayal during the war that a lot of people are really angry about. And I'm just having a really good time. The writing is amazing. The atmosphere is amazing. The characters, if you're a fan of Gideon from Gideon the Ninth. I think you will really love our godkiller Kissin because she has that same kind of like devil may care, reckless, sweary swagger that Gideon has with a little bit of humor. And I also really like Elagast, who is our dark, brooding knight, although also seems like genuinely good-hearted and a good person. And even though his king did something that he didn't really believe in, I feel like he does have like a good middle ground where he sees both sides of the story and isn't kind of blinded by one particular take, which I really like that kind of balanced stance that he has there. And then the two other characters that we actually have perspectives of are the little girl and also the god, which is cool. I need to get to page, it's not very far actually, page 126 for today, which the chapters in here are, like I said, it's a very short book, but they do read quite slowly. Like, it's not a fast read at all. And I was doing public sprints yesterday, and in like a 30-minute sprint I was reading like 15 pages, so it's definitely like a little bit of a dense one, and I feel like that's potentially why we're getting like this really rich world building coming through.
I tried my best to hide feelings deep inside, starstruck in those eyes. I didn't think she knew my existence, wondering with all persistence, wondering where she gone, falling further on.
It's late. It is 11:22 and I should be asleep, but I'm not because my sleeping pattern has not been quite right since the beginning of the year. Honestly, I mean, I had anxiety today, obviously, but like seasonal depression in general, and then at the beginning of the year, the first week of the year or the second week was like hormonal issues. So my sleep is all over the place, which isn't great. This is supposed to be my year of efficiency and it is not going to plan, but I did go for my fillings earlier, and we will all be glad to know that it was the anxiety removing type of appointment. So I feel much better now, but my watch does track my anxiety and it has been like up and down and all over the place for the entire day. I love how I'm putting my bonnet on, which generally keeps my hair smooth. That's why I wear it. But my hair is like enormous and poofy right now because I had it like wavy and then brushed it out. But hey ho, it's just comfortable. I'm used to sleeping in it now, and it always slips down onto my face. So it actually also doubles as an eye mask, which is fun. I do have to go to the dentist at some point because my bite isn't quite right, which is frustrating, but it should be a quick fix. And a fun thing happened actually, which wasn't fun. It made me panic a little bit. For the first time ever, when I had the anesthetic, it paralyzed like my lip and my nose here, and this was the last thing for the sensation to come back to. So for like 6 or 7 hours I couldn't move this part of my lip, and it was weird. It was really weird, and I was thinking that my face was going to be stuck there forever because I could feel pretty much every other area of my face apart from this one muscle that I couldn't move. But I'm checking in before bed because I have finally picked up another book. I've started The Deer and the Dragon by Piper CJ. I had a bath earlier because I just wanted to like calm down and find some zen, and when I finished my section of Godkiller for the day, I decided that I was going to be picking this one up because this one has actually been on my TBR the longest. It is a Patreon pick and it is Katie's pick, and I've been nervous about this one. It sounds fine in terms of the synopsis, like it's nothing that I would be running out to grab, but it's also not like offensive or anything. There's nothing in it that I actively dislike. Piper CJ though, I just haven't heard really great things about, but so far I am enjoying it. I'm not very far in, I'm only on page like 32. It is a little bit meta though because the main character is an author and she has this very like cocky, I don't care what you think attitude, which to be fair lines up with a lot of things that I've heard about Piper CJ and like her social media and stuff. But in terms of the plot, this one is about a woman who has like imaginary friends, but they're not imaginary. Like she mentions that when she was a kid she had a fox that she made up that was like her best friend, and when she was older she started seeing this guy who we know from the synopsis is a prince of hell, and they have like a romantic, a sexual relationship. However, nobody else can see him, so she keeps saying to him like, you're ruining my life, like I don't want to see you anymore, which caused him to go invisible, so she hasn't actually seen him for like 6 years. However, he does still visit her at night and you know, things happen. But it says on the back of this that the Prince of Hell goes missing and she has to find him, and it turns out that she has like a curse. I don't think it's a curse, I think it's more of a gift that her mother and her grandmother also have, which is to see angels and demons. So it's like romantic, but I think it's more of of like an urban fantasy in nature, and I'm having an okay time so far. It's very early days, but the writing style is already a little bit more sophisticated than I thought it was going to be, if I'm being honest. So far better than expected. I also realized when I was brushing my teeth that my top was inside out, and I was like, cool, before I start a vlog update, I'll fix that. Didn't do that though, did I? So I am hoping that I'm in focus. I've been editing Shelve It or Scrap It over the last couple of days, and I had like 2.5 hours of footage to go through, so it has taken me quite some time. But I noticed that there were a couple of clips that I filmed like on the couch, and the lighting is like not great in terms of, it's ambient lighting, you know, it's supposed to be behind us to help us read and stuff. So there's nothing like directly in front of me, and I noticed like a couple of those clips were out of focus. So I hope that's not happening right now, but I wanted to come and check in with you guys because I'm very aware that I haven't over the last couple of days. I feel like I've been a little bit quiet, and honestly, like I am struggling a little bit mentally. It's not like sadness, it is not even tiredness, just a lack of motivation, I feel. And I'm really struggling. I feel like having a dentist appointment that I was really anxious about in the middle of the week has kind of just like knocked me out of it for the entire week, because before the appointment I was anxious about the appointment, and then after the appointment I'm recovering from the anxiety. Because if any of you guys don't struggle with anxiety, what is it like? Please tell me. But it can be quite physically exhausting. So it normally takes me, after like a bad period of anxiety, it takes me a couple of days to kind of come round. And so I just feel like everything's getting away from me. I just feel like I'm so behind on everything. And I spend all of my time either trying to catch up or just continuously worrying about how behind I am, that I don't have any like energy for anything else. I'm also behind on reading, and I know that doesn't matter too much, but I just feel like I'm getting to the end of my day and I'm like, but where has my day gone? Like today I worked, I went and I got my fringe trimmed because that was getting ridiculous and it was like pointing in all directions. I went and got a couple of things from Tesco with Curtis. I worked out, I made dinner, and now it is 8:20 p.m. and I'm finally sitting down with a book. Now I did read a couple of chapters today while I was waiting for Shelve It or Scrap It to import, so I'm up to date on my daily pages for Godkiller, and I'm still really enjoying this one. I just need to move my bookmark. I'm 204 pages into it, so I only have 88 left. I'm still really enjoying Hannah Keener's writing style, and I'm trepidatious about what is to come, because there are elements of this plot that I feel like I took them in good faith at the beginning, and now like things are starting to change. Like I'm starting to get suspicious about certain elements, and I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out, because at this moment I feel like it really could go either way. Brie is about to come in from her walk, so just so you're aware if you hear any noise or anything, which there will be because she's gonna race through. But yeah, I'm still enjoying this one, and it's actually like, it's not a super slow read, but it is, considering it's a small book, like it is taking me longer to read than an average 300-page book would. So I feel like all of my reading energy is going towards this, which means that I haven't actually really read any of this today. I haven't dipped into my ebook of The Mistake for the last couple of days. I'm truly just not getting anything read, and it is not for lack of trying. Like I feel like I spend all day being excited to finally sit down and read. Like last night, for example, I didn't work out because I was still sore from a strength workout that I did on Tuesday. So I intended to spend my entire evening reading, and then by the time I was like ready, like done with everything that I had to do in the day, and I sat down to read, it was like going on for 9 p.m. and I go to bed at 10. So I'm hoping over the weekend, because I do have a 24-hour readathon with my patrons from 6 p.m. on Saturday through to the same time on Sunday. So I'm hoping to get quite a lot of reading done there. I am going to be picking up a new book though, because for every 24-hour readathon I do with my patrons, I read one of the Pretty Little Liars books. But I'm hoping that I can also keep up to date on my daily pages, so finish this on Sunday, and also get through a chunk of this one as well.
I tried my best to hide.
I am a little bit sweaty because I just got in from my first run of the year. It was difficult. I need to stop taking like 3 weeks off running. The last couple of weeks have either been, it's been really cold, like if it's close to 0 I'm not going, like it's 3 degrees today and I'll go then. But over the last couple of weeks it's been really icy, and I'm clumsy enough as it is. I'm not running on tarmac when there's that like silvery ice over it, because I'm just asking for trouble. But I went for a run and it was hard. I'm still out of breath. I feel like my cardiovascular system was really tested. But now that I'm home, it's because it's Saturday, I did sleep in a little bit, so I think it's like 10:57 and I'm about to have breakfast. So I wanted to show you guys what I'm having because this is another small business and I love these. So if you missed last week's vlog, I was saying about how I'm going to be showing you guys more of the small business stuff I buy because small businesses are really struggling at the minute in the current like global political social media environment that we're in. But these are from Beck's and they are overnight oats pods. I don't have them every day because they're a little bit expensive. I think they're like £4 per pot. But this is once again an example of a small business where like you used to struggle to get hold of these and then all of a sudden like this business was struggling and almost shut down. So I was so glad when they came back in December. The shipping time's a little slower now, but honestly that's absolutely fine. And I love these. Like I don't like overnight oats when I make them at home. I have tried so hard to make something comparable to these and I just cannot. One of my favorite flavors is, I think it's the cinnamon bun flavor, but this one is the white chocolate and raspberry, which I think this is a limited one, so I'm not sure if I've had this one before. But the thing that makes these really special is the cashew, I'm pretty sure it's cashew cream that's on top. You can see here we also have like a raspberry jam kind of situation and then the oats in the bottom, and they're just so well flavored. Every time I've made overnight oats for myself, they taste really bland or the texture's off, or even though I'm adding tons of ingredients and then making like a 500 calorie pot, it still doesn't taste good. So I do like to treat myself to these every now and again. Like every couple of months I'll buy myself like a box of 6 because I think that's the minimum order on them. And then every time I need a little pick me up or if I'm having a little treat, I will defrost them because you can freeze them. It's actually advised that you do, and have one in the morning. So this was my motivation to get me out for a run this morning so that I didn't leave it like going into the day because I could only have my Beck's pot as a reward for my run. So I will link these in the description box. They're a little bit pricey, so they are a little bit of a treat, but they're so good. They also have quite a bit of protein in as well. I think one tub has like 10 grams, which it's not like the most protein, but it's also like not an insignificant amount as well, you know? I am setting up for sprints. I've got 13 minutes, but pretty much everything is done aside from connecting my camera. I have had a long day. After my run and my breakfast, I did the food shop, and then I went and helped with like a little community, not a gardening project, but they were clearing an area of land because it was all overrun with brambles. So me and Curtis went and helped out with that earlier. Then I pretty much came home, played Fortnite for 20 minutes and made dinner, and now I'm setting up for sprints. So not much reading has been done today either, I'm afraid, but hopefully over the next 24 hours. My aim is to just get through as much of my currently reading as possible, but also, as I touched upon yesterday, I am going to be throwing another book into the mix, which is Ruthless by Sarah Shepherd. So this one is book 10 in the Pretty Little Liars series, which is of course a series of young adult mysteries. It is very entertaining, very like kind of its era, which is the early 2000s. I think this is a little bit later on. It'll be like 2011 for this one. So as time goes on, they get like a little bit less problematic, but essentially the first books in this series were just kind of like a time capsule of the kind of media that was being presented to teenage girls at the time. And I, of course, like was a teenager at the time that these books were being published, so they're very nostalgic for me. And I also find them to be really fun, fast palette cleansers, real easy reads. So I think my order of the evening is to catch up on my daily pages of God Killer. I'm now on page 216 and I need to get up to page 249. So I've got like 33, I think, pages of that to go. And then I'm going to start on Pretty Little Liars. I probably won't finish this today, it'll run into tomorrow. But when I come back in the morning and finish this one and then finish this one and then gonna see how far I can get into this one. This is actually very strange because for the entire week, trying to think of the last time I finished a book, the last book that I finished was The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which was like a week ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 8 days ago. And now I'm gonna finish 2 books pretty much back to back. I'm actually really excited to get cozy because I've had what I feel is like quite a tiring day doing lots of like physical things outside. So I am beyond overdue curling up on the couch and getting stuck into my book. Good morning. I'm looking a little bit worse for wear. I have done yoga this morning. I've been to the greengrocers and I really need to wash my hair. It's hair washing day anyway, but I use this hair mask occasionally. It makes my hair like super silky, like you can just like get right through it without any knots, but it does make my hair, especially a couple of days after washing, look really limp, thin and sad, which I feel is like where I'm currently at, especially my fringe. Don't even talk to me about my fringes. Stress stressing me out at the minute because I could literally feel like it's thinned, but I have no idea why. So anyway, that aside, I still have to, in the next 20 minutes, finish scheduling the episode of Shelve It or Scrap It that's literally going up tonight, as well as set up my stream. So I'm going to be brief, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update of where I'm currently at. I did finish my page goal of Godkiller, so I have 38 pages left, which is what I will be starting with in sprints today. And I also made it just past the halfway point of Ruthless, so I'm on page 198 out of like 338. So I think I'll definitely be finishing these two today, and after sprints I will let you guys know my thoughts, and then this one I might get through a little bit of. I'm having an okay time with this one. It's still a fun, quick, easy read. We are throwing in like new crazy curveballs left, right and center. We have a teen pregnancy that's just come out of nowhere, as well as some casual drug use. And I mean, I'm living for the drama, but at the same time, I feel like book 9, as it was setting up like a whole new story arc, like it was a little bit slow, not a lot really happened. I kind of feel the same with this, like I still don't know what direction it's going in, and considering the books have added like 60-70 pages onto them, I feel like there should be more in it instead of less. So it's not a chore to read or anything, but it's not as much as happening as has in the previous books. So I'm gonna go before I like really end up down to the wire on getting these sprints sorted, and I will let you guys know when sprints have finished, like what the deal is with where I'm up to. My readathon finished a couple of hours ago now, and I have since had dinner. However, I have not finished my K-drama. I have one episode left of Doom at Your Service, which I actually intended to watch tonight, but the football's on, so I don't get to. So I guess I'll be talking to you guys about my thoughts on that in next week's vlog as opposed to this week's. But I am here to talk to you guys about a couple of other things that I finished, which are of course the 2 books that I've dedicated most of the 24-hour readathon to, both of which I have finished. I didn't get to read any of The Deer and the Dragon, which I've actually left in the living room during the 24 hours, but that is going to be my focus maybe going into next week's vlog. I haven't quite decided what I'm doing for next week's vlog now, but I am leaning towards a like romance focused weekly vlog, in which case I will definitely be continuing on with The Deer and the Dragon in that one. But in terms of what I finished today, the first book was Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. This one started extremely strongly for me. I think that the writing and the atmosphere are the strength of this book, and also how beautifully and concisely Hannah Kaner managed to build this complex world, despite having a slightly shorter page count than you would typically have in a fantasy novel of this caliber. Now, I did end up giving it 4 stars, and that is because the plot for me did not quite deliver. And it's not that it was bad at all or that I didn't enjoy it. It's just that the plot itself was nothing extraordinary. And at the beginning, like the prose in here was so lyrical and lush, but when you get about a third halfway through, it starts to settle into a kind of typical fantasy narrative of these 3 characters heading into this city full of gods to each achieve their own purpose. And that plot is not anything extraordinary, and it wasn't executed in a way that was particularly extraordinary. However, the shining star of this book is the complexity and richness of the world, and how well Hannah Kaner managed to build it with a really stunning writing style and a really like thick, heavy atmosphere. So I think when we stopped focusing so much on building the world and started to focus more on carrying the story is where I started to enjoy it just slightly less, and it is truly slightly. This is like a middle of the road 4-star for me. I am going to be continuing on with the sequel Sunbringer in February, and I'm also going to be buddy reading that one with Aaron as well. So I'm definitely intrigued enough to continue. I just wasn't as invested in the plot or the characters as I wanted to be, given how invested I was in the atmosphere and the writing. Definitely very, very strong though, and I am a sucker. I like the thing that I like to say is that I would read well-written shit. This isn't shit, but it was well written. So the writing style alone is enough for me to carry on in this series. And then the second book that I read, I would also describe as well written for what it is, even though the plot is a little bit shit at this point. And that is Ruthless by Sarah Shepherd, which is the 10th book in the Pretty Little Liars series. So this just feels like a lot of the same as the first 8 books in this series. Like where we ended up at the end of this book was very reminiscent of where we ended up, I think, at the end of book 4 in the series, using the same kind kind of, not plot conventions or anything, but the same kind of accidents are befalling the same kind of characters, let's say. And it did do something a little bit different in this one and kind of took it to a different conclusion than book 4 did, but it was very, very reminiscent of something that I've read before in the series. At this point, we are kind of more in line with the tone of the TV show, because while this is still super sinister, while we have this anonymous texter blackmailing the main characters, I feel like it's a lot more deadly and a lot more life-threatening in the TV show than the books. And I feel like the game has been upped a little bit, like it's a little bit more a story of life and death than it really was in the first half of the series. So it feels a little bit more sinister and a little bit threatening in that regard, but it also kind of just seems to be more and more of the same, which is fine in some regard, because I'm not reading this for excellent plot progression. I'm reading it because it's a fast, fun time, and it definitely delivers on that. But I would say plot-wise and storyline-wise, it is not as gripping as it has been previously, while I'm definitely still enjoying the atmosphere, the tone, and the writing of this one. It's kind of like, you know, when you read a series that has so many installments following the same characters, that eventually it gets to a point where it's like, all of this stuff cannot still be happening to the same people. Like, how unlucky would you have to be for this to be your entire life and all of these terrible things to happen to you all of the time? That is how this series kind of goes. I am enjoying, though, seeing a different side to a particular character, because I think I know how this series ends in terms of like some of the main things that happen at the end, but I'm doubting myself. I don't know if my memory is correct, so I'm interested in seeing whether it does develop in that direction. And if it does go the way that I think it does, then you start to see the inklings of it in here. And it is something, it does kind of just come out of nowhere between, I guess, book 8 and where we like pick up in book 9. Like, a lot of the characters are behaving a little bit differently than they have done in the past to serve the plot, but that's fine, because like I said, it's just a fast, fun time. I'm not looking for any great masterpiece of literature from this. I'm not looking for excellent plot development, any complexity of plot. I'm just looking for a good time, and it's still delivering on that front. I did give this one 3 stars. I've given all the books in the series either 3 or 4, with the ones that were a little bit more entertaining or with stronger plot work being a 4, and then the ones that don't quite hit that mark being a 3. That is 2 books from my January TBR down. My aim for next week, if I do go with the romance leaning reading vlog, is pretty much going to be to clear my TBR aside from library books, because I mean, fuck library books at this point. I'm just not getting to them. But if I do manage to clear everything else, then that of course will still be a massive win. So do stay tuned for that if you are at all interested. This week has been a bit of a weird one, because I feel like I've just been not even like overwhelmed, but like overwhelmed by my own anxiety this week. So like I felt a lot more drained than I should have done based on what I've actually done this week, because of everything that's going on up here that shouldn't be. But actually I'm feeling so much better now. That dentist appointment was the cause of all this. So the beginning of the week was a train wreck because of the anxiety of the dentist appointment, and then everything after was kind of the aftershocks of the anxiety leaving my body. So I mean, we do this, like this happens sometimes where I have an off week, but I always bounce back the week after. So I'll see you next week, and we will hopefully have a little bit of a better time. But I do hope you guys have enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.